TJ's got the tracks. Talking I-dos without holding back. From bridezillas to budgets that break. We spill the tea, no filters, no fakes. Venue drama, cake disaster. How to dodge that floral master. Vows, vendors, legal blunders. We light it up and bring the thunder. Unfiltered I-dos, we tell it like it is. From lovers, hustlers, and the wedding biz. No fluff, just facts and the stories you choose. With Erin and TJ, we're breaking the news. Unfiltered I-dos, let's talk it through.
Welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered I-dos. I am your host, TJ Harris, and of course with me, once again, the wonderful Erin Calvamontes.
Hello, everyone. Hey, TJ, good day, huh?
Yeah, I love your outfit.
Thank
It's very
you.
festive and fun. I like the necklace.
Love a little color in my life. I want to introduce a good friend of mine, Chadd Colin. He is a business attorney and a shareholder at Morella and Associates,
Okay.
a law firm that is right here in Ross Township. And Chadd, thank you for coming. I want you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and how your involvement is with the company.
Thanks, and thank you so much, Erin and TJ, for having me. This is a really cool space, and I'm really happy to be here. So I'm a shareholder, which means just a partner. I have 4 other business partners with me, and some other folks, some associate lawyers, and some support staff with us at our firm out in Ross Township. I am in the corporate and commercial practice group, which just means the business group, right? So we do contracts. We do, if you're buying or selling a business, we'll help you with that. Day-to-day business contracts, some employment issues, some independent contractor issues, which I'm sure you guys confront regularly. What we want to do is we want to be counsel and really a partner to businesses that are too small or too young to have their own in-house legal departments. So that's my day job, and I'm very happy to be there. I also volunteer as a youth sports coach, McCandless Athletic Association,
Very
Little
nice.
League, Ingomar Franklin Park Little League. I coach youth hockey in the Pittsburgh Penguins Mite Development League. And I also volunteer on a nonprofit board. It's called the Pittsburgh Warriors, and our motto is healing through hockey. So these are all folks that have service-related disabilities, and they're playing hockey, and we ship them around the country to play in hockey tournaments, and it's really, really a great program. I'm really happy to be with them.
I'm assuming you were then a hockey player yourself growing up?
I still am a hockey
Okay.
player. I played yesterday morning in the Old Man League out
Okay.
in Cranberry. But I was also a hockey official for about 15 years.
Oh, cool.
Including college hockey and 3 years in minor pro hockey.
What's your position? You a center? You a wing?
I'm a defenseman.
Defenseman, okay.
No hands.
Okay.
Really good at getting in the way, but no scoring touch whatsoever. I think maybe, let's see, I've been playing hockey for probably 35 years, and I have maybe, we'll call it 15 goals lifetime.
Okay.
So I'm good for a goal, once every 3 years, maybe.
Perfect. Well, at least you're setting the expectations where they're manageable for you.
Right, exactly.
So how did you end up getting? I know we'll talk about lawyering in a second, but how did you end up getting involved in like the youth leagues?
I grew up playing sports, my whole life. And I have 2 kids who are both in sports.
Okay.
My daughter is 5, my son is 7. And just that youth sports was like the best time of my life,
Okay.
right? And that was something that my dad was, always with me for, coaching my teams when I was a kid. He wasn't a hockey player. He couldn't skate well, but he tried a few times. But yeah, that's the best part of my week, really,
Yeah.
is getting to go out, especially with my kids, and teach them these games. Run around,
Yeah.
have a good time, and it's really something that I really enjoy.
So I'll use sports to segue into lawyering.
Okay.
And I'll call it lawyering because that's the best term I have for it.
That's a good term.
Thanks. So As somebody that grew up playing, organized sports, being on teams, things like that, do you think that gave you an advantage or like a step above when it came to becoming a lawyer and like especially becoming, a partner and being somebody that would be like a leader within your community in that firm?
Yeah, I really do. The lessons that you learn as a young person playing sports are really, really important. And in a lot of ways, TJ, they're the best. It's the best way to learn. I mean, success and failure, teamwork, teachability, right? These are all really important things that, you experience firsthand in that team sport environment where you get like immediate feedback, right? If we're not working as a team, we're going to lose.
Yeah.
So, that really, I think helps any professional really. I mean, years and years ago, I actually wrote a letter to the editor for the Daily Collegian, the Penn State student newspaper, after I had graduated, just talking about the importance of athletics, and the lessons that they bring. So I really think because 99.9% of kids who play youth sports are not going to do that for a living.
Yeah.
So in addition to the fun, in addition to the exercise, there is definitely value in that, beyond just maybe one day I'll play with Sidney Crosby or Andrew
Right.
McCutcheon.
My son is a 12-year-old chubby white kid who thinks he's going to be in the NBA still, and I support his dreams so much, but I also try and keep him in reality, where it's like, listen, you have all the potential in the world, my guy, and you may actually make it there someday if you really try hard.
Right.
But let's also
Right.
read books.
Yeah.
Let's also learn math.
Well, I mean, I did not have any particular greatness in terms of natural athletic ability. I just stuck with it a really long time. I got to be a professional. I got to be in minor pro hockey. I always joke with my other friends. If you're really, really okay at something for a really, really long time, eventually you'll get your opportunity.
Yeah.
So, I would say to your son, if he really loves basketball, maybe there's an opportunity for him to stay in that game, maybe not necessarily on the court shooting threes or slam dunks, but, I was an official, like I said, no hands, right?
Oh,
But I can
he's
skate a
solid
little.
with the color commentary.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll put him in front of a mic all day.
That's perfect. That sounds great.
It's funny that you say that you just kind of stuck with. That's pretty much how my DJ career happened. Like I just kept sticking with it, and like if you outlast everybody else,
That's exactly right.
You become the guy. And now it's like, okay, this dude we know for 25 years has been doing this thing, hasn't failed at it. He might not be the 100% best. There might be some. I am the best. There might be some people out there that are just as good.
Right.
But the consistency is really what keeps me working. Is like I never let anybody down.
And I mean, I'm sure that's it's a big part of your dream, right? Is I'm sure you love music. I'm sure you love productions and lights and bells and whistles and having a really good time. But you've stuck with it for long enough where you just keep pounding on that rock, and eventually a piece falls off,
100%.
right? And here you are. I mean, I'm in your shop right now. I don't know if you call it a shop, but I mean, this is a really neat space. You got a ton of equipment. You have, a production team behind the scenes here, behind the camera. So I mean, obviously you've had success.
Yeah.
It just takes a while to get there.
That's it. It was probably 15 years of doing it before I really started being able to make it a career. I know Erin has some questions prepared for you.
Yeah. So, Chadd, one of the reasons we put this podcast together was to be able to communicate with other event professionals and kind of keep it real. And I appreciated you being able to come on because one of the things that we really want to hammer into people is the importance of a contract. I cannot tell you how many vendors don't have contracts, and it's scary. It really is scary. But also one of the biggest questions I often get is, do I really need a lawyer for it? Yeah. Do you hear that a lot?
Yeah, I do. And I mean, the question is, do I need a lawyer, right? And the answer is no, you don't need a lawyer. Now, should you have a lawyer? That's a whole other question, and I think the answer is yes. And people get intimidated. I think when you're talking about I need to go see a lawyer. I need a contract. I need to do all these things. People can get intimidated by the cost, right? The potential for cost is a big concern. But, I think the message from the legal community, or at least, the message that I try to put out there is, it doesn't have to be intimidating. It doesn't have to be expensive necessarily. It doesn't have to be an adversarial or confrontational process. It's something that I think most people, most consumers, most buyers in 2025, I think are going to expect out of people in the event planning industry, or really almost any industry when you're performing a professional service. I mean, you can't get on a website without agreeing to 30 pages of terms and conditions, right? So I think people are, buyers and consumers are probably conditioned to expect it at this point. I think that it can be, it can be something that's accessible to, small business owners who are, on their own. A lot of times in the event industry, you're probably on your own, one person shop, that sort of thing. So I think it is something that can be done, for them.
As a business attorney and a company that's helping put together contracts, are you also helping all those businesses that are just getting started, like file their LLCs and getting their EINs and really establishing themselves as legitimate businesses?
Yes, absolutely. And, that is something that is critical for any small business owner, is to create that corporate entity, whether it be an LLC or an Inc. or something. Create something that, will be a separate and distinct entity for yourself, right? I mean,
can you explain the importance to people of why we do that?
Sure. The importance for doing that is essentially to protect yourself from liability, right? So if something goes wrong, heaven forbid, in the event, and you get into a dispute with your buyer, or there's some other, liability incident, somebody gets hurt at a party that you're producing, or somebody gets sick with the food that you're serving, right? That separate legal entity, if you get sued, the person doing the suing will sue the entity, not you personally.
Yep.
And as such, the person doing the suing will only be able to collect or recover from whatever is in this company here. Yep. So, if you have a home, if you have a car, if you have, bank accounts, all of this will be set aside for you personally. And then we have this whole other separate being that we create. It's, it's effectively a legal fiction, but it's a separate being that we create that will be dedicated to exclusively business activities and any bad stuff that comes out of our business activities.
So basically, it's your raincoat. It's protecting you from the raindrops of negativity.
Right, and I would add that a great accessory to have with your raincoat is an umbrella, which would be some kind of insurance, some kind of business insurance.
Now, do you work closely with insurance agents or anything like that you recommend for somebody that's starting a business?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can get, TJ, a commercial general liability insurance policy. That's basically just like, standard business insurance, right? If you're not doing anything dangerous, right, in your business, like if you're a skydiving company, right, you're probably going to have to pay a higher insurance premium on your liability insurance, and you're going to have to get probably a couple other insurances as well. But commercial general liability insurance policies, again, very accessible. You can get a lot of coverage for a reasonable price. And we do, partner with a lot of insurance agents in the area because, again, it's all part of a team, right? Mm-hmm. You work together. You talk about the issues that the business is going to face, and you put together, a plan for the business that will set the business up for success. Insurance agents, lawyers, accountants, tax advisors. These are all people that you should have on your business bullpen, your business bullpen.
Well, Chadd, getting back to contracts, I often hear, people think they should definitely have one, but they're nervous about what to put in it. They don't want to draft it themselves. And then they're also concerned about the cost of having someone like yourself help them out with it. Where do you stand on that?
Again, it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be long, right? Like we're not doing a multi-million or multi-billion-dollar, acquisition here, right? So it doesn't have to be 20 pages, 50 pages long. It should just be a real, simple, concise, easy to understand is the key, especially when you're in the consumer event industry. Easy to understand, plain statement of what I'm going to do for you, when I'm going to do it, how I'm going to get paid, and if we have a dispute or if something goes wrong or if there's any related issues, then this is what happens, right? We plan for it like a safety net, right? We plan for things to go well. Sometimes they don't. Here is what will happen if things don't go well.
And then that's great. With all that said, what are some tips of things that people should absolutely have in their contracts, especially for the event industry?
Yeah. So for the event industry specifically, here's how I would set up a contract for the event industry, right? You would have I would call them terms and conditions, right? This would be some of the legalese stuff that, liability, intellectual property rights, which we can get into, remedies, payment terms, stuff like that. That would be, part one. Part two, I think, would be your scope of work or your scope of services. I'm going to, play music at your event for 3 hours. I'm going to supply all the equipment necessary. I'm going to, furnish you with, 3 dozen roses or 30 dozen roses for all the centerpieces, whatever that might be. That would be your scope of work. And then for a business like yours, Erin, where you're the producer of the event, right? You're the
GC.
You're the GC, but you're the person who's running the show, so to speak, right? You probably have some policies or procedures in what you do. For example, I need a phone number for somebody that I can contact at all times. I want to make sure that my staff is fed that night. I want to make sure that, we have a place to sit. I need, such and such of a room, right, to stage my equipment or whatnot. That would be the third part. So you would have, the legal stuff, the scope of work, and then, how this is going to go, what I need you to do, buyer, what I need you to do to make this work.
Is there anything that stands out to you in your career as like the most outrageous thing you've seen in a contract that somebody was expecting?
The most outrageous thing I've ever seen in a contract? Boy, because I deal mostly with, contracts with other lawyers, right? The more outrageous things tend to get sifted out.
Okay.
The most outrageous thing I would say that I saw, oh boy, maybe so big financial penalties.
Okay.
Are
Like if you don't pay in 30 days, you owe me an extra 10 grand.
Exactly. And people put that in there because they want to put the fear into other people. Oh, gee, I better pay on time or else I'm in a world of hurt. A lot of times those types of provisions are not enforceable, big, especially financial penalties, for non-performance or for late performance. So, things like that tends to be a sign that, an amateur or a lay person rather, put that together. So that's probably it.
So they didn't hire you.
No, I don't usually put things like that in. Now, there's a way to get some, it's not a penalty, it's called liquidated damages.
Okay.
Where, for example, you could say, look, I'm reserving my time for you. If you cancel your event, this is time that I could have devoted to another project that is not going forward now. So in the event that you cancel, say within 10 days of the event, you will pay to me as liquidated damages and not a penalty. And that's what we say. Liquidated damages and not a penalty.
This is huge because from the DJ contracts perspective, especially in our group, and I don't think we're calling it this way, so I might be doing this wrong. But it says that if you cancel, less than 30 days prior to an event, you owe us the remaining balance of your budget, which technically is probably not the correct way that I should have that worded. It should be liquidated damages for the remaining balance, right? Or would it be a fee that's adjacent to that as liquidated damages?
So it depends on the rest of the language in the agreement and how you're structuring your payment is how I would answer that question. But it's liquidated damages is a tool, I think, that can help clear up some of those issues around you're owed this much if you cancel here, you're owed that much if you cancel there.
Okay.
It's something that can smooth it out a little bit, I think. But again, just because yours doesn't say exactly that doesn't necessarily mean it's not enforceable.
I've heard different things on this subject from people that said, well, if you didn't actually do the event, then they don't have to pay you because you haven't actually done the service, which is when we switched over from deposit to retainer was part of that argument at that point.
Okay.
So I'm curious now if I need to relook at my contracts and see how that's worded for that time period.
I know a guy I can hook you up with. His name is Chadd.
I love that.
That's perfect.
And so another thing, Chadd, as you know, with event professionals is Google reviews are crucial to our business and new customers, return customers. However, some want to put some sort of clause in their contract with the clients not being able to put a bad review or a negative review. Number one, is that even legal? And B, what is your take on that?
Yeah, so this was an interesting question that you brought to my attention a couple days ago when we were getting ready to shoot this, and I said, boy, that's something I had never even heard of or never even really considered, but I understand why I'd be so critical in your industry. So I did a little prep work, did a little homework. So there's something out there that's called the Consumer Review Fairness Act. And it's a consumer protection statute, and basically what it says is that you cannot contractually prohibit a customer from giving you a bad review if it's true or if it's their opinion. So for example, a bad review might say, I didn't like the color scheme. I didn't like the music selection. The food didn't taste good. The flowers were not what I ordered. If these things are true and these things are opinions, right? I mean, it's this person's opinion. Then a contractual provision stopping them from putting that on the internet is probably not going to be enforceable. But what would be enforceable, and this is something you don't need a contract provision to deal with this issue, but it's just something that's in the common law is what we say. You can't defame people, you can't slander people, right? So if you had a bad experience at an event, and the reviewer goes onto Google and says, Erin got really, really out of hand at the party, and TJ, said something offensive in front of all my guests, and we just had if it's not true, then that would be defamatory, that would be slander and libelous, and that would be something that you could act upon in those instances. But people, a contract that says you can't express your opinion on the internet as long as it's an opinion or it doesn't contain any false information. I don't think we're going to be able to enforce those, unfortunately.
Interesting. So in the world of reviews and businesses and stuff like that, what should a client know when they see something like that in a contract? Because obviously we're talking about from our side of this right now, but like the clients are also receiving a contract. So where are their protections lying then if we're trying to protect ourselves?
Sure. I mean, the client's protections are in the scope of work, right? I mean, it should be a clear statement of what you're going to deliver to that client.
Okay.
Really as specific as you can make it. You know, if we're doing a party for 100 people, you know, say we're doing a party for 100 people. If we're, you know, going to play music for 3 hours and 45 minutes, say we're going to play music for 3 hours and 45 minutes. There shouldn't be, and there's really no need for it to be, TJ, any, you know, really harsh one-way provisions, you know, provisions that only favor the vendor, right? In a consumer contract like this, there's just no need for it, especially in the event planning space. You know, there's a fine line between being professional and being really aggressive. And, you know, if your client is reading a contract that says, I need, I don't know. So I always think about some of those crazy, you know, sheets that old bands in the 70s used
Artist
to have.
riders.
Yeah,
Only the yellow M&Ms.
yeah, right.
Listen, you should see some of the. I started off in event production in that world, like throwing concerts and stuff.
Yeah.
And you should see some of the stuff people have asked me for.
I'll bet.
I need a 6-pack of socks. I need Fiji water. I need a specific type of rum they only make in Jamaica. And, come on, bro.
Yeah.
You're not getting any of that.
No. So I mean, same holds true for, you know, a contract like this, right? You know, if it doesn't pass the smell test, you know, you're gonna scare off a lot of business. So like I said, there's a fine line between being professional and being, you know, off-puttingly aggressive.
Yeah. Okay.
So a lot of people, and it's all very good information. Thank you so much. However, I know some people are nervous about the cost of having a lawyer. Like, all just hearing that word lawyer, all they see dollar signs.
Yeah.
How expensive, if you don't mind me asking, would your services or someone like yourself be for someone to come in and ask for assistance with their contract?
Sure. So I'll say it this way, Erin. So, you know, if I do a simple vendor contract for a person and I charge them $10,000 for, you know, 5 pieces of paper, you know, they might pay me, but they're never coming back.
Yeah.
They're never coming back again. And they're going to tell all their friends, you know, this guy charged me $2,000 a page for this contract, right? So, you know, that's always at the forefront of my thought when I meet a new client, because, you know, we're not trying to hit a home run every time. We want the relationship. We want to grow with the business. And, you know, then after you build your DJ and production company up to $100 million business and you sell it to, you know, HBO or Time Warner or somebody like that, yeah, give them a call, right? You know, that's when I'll send you a big bill.
Yeah.
Okay?
Have you considered as a business attorneys developing like a new business, like offering, like, hey, if you're a new business and you're looking to get started, we have like a base level package that will help you get started with?
Yeah, we absolutely offer that at my firm, and it's a flat fee. You know, it varies. You know, for a one person, you know, single member, one owner.
Yeah.
Member managed. In other words, the owner makes all the decisions. Limited liability company. You know, we at our firm charge a flat fee for that, and again, it's very reasonable and very approachable. And we'll do the operating agreement for the LLC, which is, you know,
It's
the
mandatory
contract.
too, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. If you're going to open a bank account, they're going to ask you for your operating agreement, right? I mean, some people think, you know, an operating agreement is in itself a contract, and some people say, well, if I'm the owner and I'm the manager,
Who
why
am
do
I agreeing to?
Right? Why do I need a contract with myself? And again, it's something that a bank is going to want to see. You know, once again, if heaven forbid there's litigation involved, you know, you're going to want to have evidence that you have set this thing up apart from yourself. So it is an essential document. And again, you know, it doesn't have to be crazy, right? I mean, we help people with this sort of thing all the time. We have a form that we use that we, again, repurpose regularly. That it doesn't have to be a time-consuming project. So we'll have the operating agreement. We'll have the paperwork that you need to file with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that actually registers the entity with the Secretary of State. We'll get you a tax ID number, and then we'll get you the more formalized documents of, transferring the rights from the person who did the forming, right? So that would be me. Yeah. I file the formational document with the Secretary of State. The person who did the forming to the person who's going to own it, okay. Right? And then, get you a nice little electronic minute book for yourself, and, it's a package deal, and you're ready to go with that.
That's awesome. That's super convenient. I think we got time for maybe one more question, and then we're going to let you tell the world how they can find you and maybe take advantage of that.
Right on.
So, yes, well, I actually have two, but let me start out with the one. What do you think is the most important piece of advice about doing a contract? So
I would say that the most important thing to do when you're doing a contract is set expectations. That's the biggest purpose of a contract is to set expectations, right? Is to say, this is how our business relationship is going to go. This is what it's going to look like. And so that if there's ever any problem, you have this piece of paper to fall back on. Erin, you told me that this was going to be a party for 100 people. It's only you've only served 75. Well, actually, if you look here in the scope of work that I gave you that you signed off on, it says this is a party for 75. It's not my fault that 25 extra friends decided to crash your party, right? So establish expectations, and then just over communicate with your client is the best way to deal with it. Once you've got that contract inked, you want to be in communication with them regularly as the event is progressing, as the planning is progressing, as the process is unfolding, so that there's no surprises, right? We don't want any surprises. Surprises are bad unless it's your birthday and somebody shows up with a cake.
I don't even do surprise parties. Right. I absolutely hate them.
Right. And make it. It doesn't have to be adversarial or confrontational. It's a tool. It's a sign of professionalism, and it's something that I personally think every small business owner who's a vendor like you folks are really should have.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. This has been really cool.
Chadd, if people want to find you to schedule a meeting or maybe have you review a contract or something like that, where can they find you at?
Sure. So my firm is called Morella and Associates. It's on Rochester Road in Ross Township. Our website is morellalaw.com, all one word, or you can call us at 412-369-9696, and I'd be happy to talk with you.
Awesome. Chadd, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Really
thank
appreciate
you,
it. It's
TJ.
always good to see
Erin,
you.
thank you so much.
Pleasure, as
And
always.
that's it. Unfiltered I Do's. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode.
We're not here to sugarcoat. We're crashing your Pinterest dreams. Let's go. Erin's got the clipboard, TJ's got the tracks.